Welcome back to episode 4 of Stayin' Alive with me, Jesse Smith, a voyage into the mechanics of creativity and how artists keep that creative ship sailing. Hello everyone, I hope you're all safe and well. We are still in lockdown here in the UK, and it looks like us creators will be for the foreseeable. So it seems like the theme of this pod is even more relevant than ever. How will artists be able to stay afloat in these turbulent times? On a personal level, I'd like to really thank each and every one of you who's tuned into this pod and to one of my live streams. These gigs have been the real source of comfort and purpose for me, as well as an essential stream of income from your generous donations. So I really do thank you for the bottom of my demonic rock and roll heart. When you have a sec, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review, as it really helps other people to find the pod. And if you like what you hear, please tell your friends, as there's nothing that helps spread the word more than a recommendation from a mate. Another way you can help me make these podcasts is by donating. You can do so by heading over to jessesmithuk.com and click donate. The pod is currently totally independent, so anything you can do would really help me keep bringing you these stories. If you've got any comments or ideas for the show, or you'd just like to get in touch, you can do so by emailing stayingalivepod@gmail.com. One email we particularly enjoyed this week was from Sue Robinson. She says, and I quote, "My nephew was a musician until he was lured to writing and politics, and I learned about music in the 90s and noughties from him. It is interesting to hear the up-to-date info of what's happening now. The music business has changed. It has changed a lot and mostly not for the better. Musicians haven't changed though. The things you discuss are the same things that previous generations of musicians have discussed. Same passions, same ambitions. It is life-consuming. It isn't a choice. It's a necessity." Thanks for that email, Sue. I really love the idea that the game has changed, but the players are the same. Today's guest is one of the best bass players I've ever had the privilege of working with. As well as being a permanent fixture in the classic rock show, today's guest was BG Robin Gibbs' bass player and later musical director from 2003 until his death in 2012. He is also an accomplished songwriter and composer and has toured with many other bands and artists such as Sabbat, that I pronounced wrong in this pod, Saxon, Joe Lynn Turner and Messiah's Kiss, to name but a few. Having stood alongside him on the Classic Rock Show tour, I can speak from personal experience that his playing, as well as his energy on and off stage, is second to none. Speaking to me from his home studio in Nottingham is Wayne Banks. Have you been doing Insanity?
Yeah, every other day.
Every other day, yeah.
I've been really...
you, Sean.
Yeah, honestly. I've even got Amelia saying, "Fuck you, Sean." It's so funny. She'll be here.
Sean T.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So we're recorded, by the way. I'm here.
We're allowed to say
Banks.
Insanity.
Yeah, you can say whatever you like. That's the beauty of podcasting.
Right,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I'll just introduce you. So I'm here with Wayne Banks, who's a really great mate of mine. He's sat in his studio. He's got his locks all tied up underneath an Adidas cap tonight.
Yep.
And he's got his shirt on for a change.
Yeah, well, the heating's only just come on. I've been sat in this room all day. Do you believe I'm sat here trying to do a bass arrangement of Goldfinger?
Oh,
James
really?
Bond. Yeah. And I've been breaking my hand doing it. And there's no reason to be doing it. It's completely pointless.
I've been sat learning Black Hole Sun properly today.
Great.
I put some really thick strings on my 335, and I'm going to do a cover of it, I think, at some point. Yeah. So basically, mate, just wanted to have a bit of a chat about your life and career. Really, the whole point of this podcast is for the audience to sort of pick up some tips about what it's like to survive as a musician through the years, and just how different people have done it and maintained it and everything else. And it's quite apt that you're the first person I've recorded, obviously, because the podcast's going to be called Stayin' Alive. And obviously, you've got a lot of connections with that, but I'm sure we'll come back to that later. But yeah, just if you could just tell everyone why you started playing bass in the first place. And
I actually wanted to be a songwriter. I used to have a really long walk to school as a kid, like they used to do in the 70s, when paedophiles didn't exist.
Have you not heard of U Tree?
Exactly. So mum would pack us off for a good, kind of half an hour, 40-minute walk to school. And in those days, because I'm 50 years old now, so, we're talking mid-70s here. There was no Walkmans. They'd not been invented and all the rest of it. So you just daydreamed all the way to school on your own. And, there was always music playing in the house. My mum always was playing music constantly at stupid volume. And,
what kind of stuff?
She was dead into the 50s stuff, Elvis and the Everly Brothers, and Demis Roussos, who I absolutely love, bizarrely enough. I actually got to meet him once, which is a whole different story. He was completely surprised that somebody of my age knew who the hell he was and liked him. Much to Howie's disgust, is I actually know more about Demis Roussos than I do Black Sabbath, but anyway. So I used to walk to school and I'd just daydream and tunes would come into my head and I would write lyrics. And so I had an uncle that was in a band, and I used to go around to my grandma's and he'd be playing, and I would sit outside his door and he'd be playing Hendrix at God knows what volume, playing along. And I always dreamt that I could do that and just be in a band. And eventually, when I got to being about 14, there was a couple of guitarists by then in the school who wanted to form a band. And nobody wanted to be the bass player.
That's so often the case, isn't it? People say, "Oh, I just ended up becoming the bass player." Paul McCartney was the same, wasn't he? And I'm sure there's tons of other people just become it by default. Yeah.
So I never actually started on guitar. I started on bass, just because I wanted to be in the band, and obviously no one was. So
as a songwriter, though, has that been a hindrance over the years? Because obviously it's surely easier to write songs on guitar or piano, I would have thought.
Well, I actually do play 6-string guitar these days. I got an acoustic guitar probably when I was about 18. I started playing bass when I was 14. So by then it was, I needed it to help me write.
Yeah.
And I did play a little bit of piano, not to the standard you do, but, so I got into that whole thing later a bit. And nowadays, I still write on both, really. It just depends.
Yeah.
I get an idea in my head, and it's the whole band's playing away in there. So you've got singing, you've got guitars going, the beat and everything, and you wake up going, "Oh, I've just dreamt a song there," and I go, "Oh, actually, it might be it's my own. It wasn't a dream."
I did that the other night, actually. I got up about 3 a.m. I've been a bit restless, I'm sure. Well, I think everyone's sleeping not very well at the moment, aren't they? Just because of everything that's going on. But yeah, I did that the other night, actually. Just got up and sort of had this weird sort of country, sort of 4-part harmony a cappella thing going on, and I recorded it the next day. It was cool.
Yeah. Well, my phone is just like yours, probably. It's just chock full of ridiculous ideas. Most of them are never rock songs and stuff like that. That's something in another band I do, that we kind of write to order with that a bit. It's a traditional heavy metal band, so we go down that route of let's try and write something in that vein.
Yeah, you've got quite a diverse kind of repertoire, really, haven't you? Because you go from sort of being in like your first band Sabbat to obviously doing the Robin Gibb thing. So what's your kind of, where do you sit naturally, do you think, as a songwriter?
I come out with a lot of things that are a bit primacy. I don't know if you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, of course.
So it's so if I'm jamming with just a drum beat in the back, and a good mate of mine I used to jam with a lot. We don't do it so much nowadays, but then it's from just a playing point of view, it'll come out in a kind of Primus, maybe Chili Peppers way. But from dreaming, and I do a lot of dreaming songs, or just walking around daydreaming, that kind of thing. That's just any style, really. I suppose I've just been doing one that's quite a kind of jazzy country type of thing, similar to yourself, I suppose. But
cool.
that's because I've just got a stand-up bass, and I've just been trying to learn more bass for the last 2 weeks. So I think it's on my mind, you know.
It's funny how a different instrument or just a different feeling will just make you write a completely different type of song, isn't it? Like if you buy a new guitar, you end up just playing different stuff. Like you'd write a completely different song on a Strat than you would on a Les Paul, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Yes, I don't know where I fit songwriting wise. I kind of when I'm just left to my own, it'll probably come out a bit. Because in general, I think I'm quite a happy person, and
I think so too.
Having a laugh. I write the most miserable, sad songs. You know, kind of a bit crowded house, that type of thing. Pearl Jam, that kind of miserable.
Yeah.
Everything's wrong, and I think that's probably why the rest of my life's quite happy. So I just on my own, you know, get it out of my system.
So what was the kind of first band you were in when you were a kid, and how far did you get with it?
Well, my very first band was a band called Rampant Socks.
Okay.
and we I actually went along to the first rehearsal, and I'd never played bass in my life. I didn't have a bass amp. I didn't know anything about it. No one had told me where to put my fingers, and I didn't know if you put them on the fret, behind the fret, or what. I just didn't even know how to tune the thing. I went, but they were hassling me for weeks because the story of me getting my first bass is quite a long story.
Right. But we got time, mate.
Well, so I digress. So getting my first bass is I was supposed to be going on a school trip to Hadrian's Wall. I'd never been on a stay overnight school trip before, and my sister had done it. I've got an older sister, and she'd done it the year before. So this time it was my turn, promised by the folks. And my dad had only just started up his business on his own, so money was a bit tight, and he generally didn't want to. He'd paid the deposit money of 25 quid, and didn't really want to. He was moaning about paying the rest of the money and the spending money I might need at the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, a friend of mine came up and says, "Oh, I've got a bass if you want to buy it." It's because I'd already joined this band. I still hadn't got a bass or loaned it. And he said, "I've got one if you want to buy it, 25 quid." I was like, "Where am I going to get 25 quid from?" So I went to my dad. I said, "I'll tell you what, Dad, if we can get the deposit money back for this trip, then you don't have to pay any more. I have that money and buy this bass." and then we're all okay. And he was like, "Yeah, all right then." He said, "But how are you going to get out of the trip?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then my grandmother died, just out of the blue.
How lucky.
Yeah, I know. So we concocted this story that I couldn't go on the trip because I'd got to go to my grandmother's funeral. But then, and this went on with the geography teacher for a while, and eventually I got called to the headmaster's office, where they caned me.
No way.
They caned me. I had to hold my hand out, and they caned me. And I was like, "What's that for?" They said, "Well, it's because you're lying about your grandmother, but you obviously need the money for some reason, because they'd never keep the body that long before they buried her." You know, I think that was the hole in our story.
Right.
But anyway, you obviously need the money, and here's a check for 25 quid, but don't lie anymore, and sent me out of the room. So I had a pretty hand-smarting pretty well. But I had 25 quid, so I went and got the bass.
No way. So you sort of sold your soul, really, before you'd even picked up the bass guitar.
That's right, yeah. And I'm so happy. I've never been so happy to be caned in my life.
That's amazing. Sorry, you were going to say
the very next day we were down in an old cellar of a mate's house, and my best mate had just got a drum kit as well. And there's a funny story, because he had we carried his kit down, and he'd never played either. So he refused to play the bass drum because he said that they looked, forgive the 1970s lingo, but he said they looked gay, and that's what people in marching bands used. So he wouldn't use the bass drum. And he didn't have a bass drum pedal anyway. We didn't even know.
Had you not heard of John Bonham at that point?
Oh no, not at all. I ain't got a clue. We were into the Sex Pistols, actually. That was our big thing.
Yeah,
that's strangely enough why I always wanted a Fender Precision. Although nowadays people always say, "Oh, you just like Steve Harris, blah blah blah," which is nice, but it's not the reason I did it. It was Precision because Sid Vicious had one, yeah. Anyway, so we got to this rehearsal. Like I say, drummer refusing to play the bass drum, and then just hitting things randomly. And they asked, we had a bit of a 3-chord thing going off. I think we played Moon Over Marin by the Dead Kennedys, which is a great dot following starter for bass guitar players.
Right.
A, G, and F kind of thing going on.
That's my kind of song, that is.
Yeah. And they kept saying, and I was playing with a pick at the time, again, because I wanted to be Sid Vicious. And they recorded the whole thing. And we went to a friend's house a couple of days later, and they played it. And they were so disgusted at how bad, because I didn't know what playing in time meant. I hadn't got a clue.
None of us do they, when you're first starting out?
They kept saying, keep in time. And I was going, I don't know what they mean. Time is a rhythm, And the lead singer, who was the most accomplished musician out of all of us, guitar player as well, he was so disgusted of the slightly older friends laughing at him that I was sat on the floor at the time, and he came past me and just booted me in the head.
What? You had quite an aggressive start to your musical career, didn't you?
And that was it, actually. That was a great thing because we didn't fall out as friends. He was just like, "You're really embarrassing," and just kicked me in the head. And then I thought, right, I'm going to get really good. I'm going to show you,
Wow, that is really baptism of fire, isn't it?
I got obsessed with it after that. I was like, I'm not having this. I want to be good at this, So,
yeah. Well, when did you get good? When did you know that you were sort of good? Was there a point, or was it just a progressive thing?
I was still in that band, and we played. We got to the point where we played at school, at a school disco, and I'd started to play with my fingers, and the one of the guys in the band had introduced me to Phantom of the Opera by Iron Maiden as the ultimate bass line to play. So I sat there for forever at home trying to play that, and that and Run to the Hills. That's what it was. Where it's that kind of galloping bass line thing going really fast. And I would sit there for hours, a lot like you can when you're a kid. I would just sit there for just hours in my bedroom, just playing until my hands were falling off, and then I'd try again and keep going. And then eventually I could play that song, and all the kids around, all my schoolmates were just amazed. So at that point, I thought, I'm good. That's it. I'm special,
And do you remember your when was the first time you got paid to play the bass? When did you sort of become a pro?
Yeah, we got that school band split up, and we got our own band together after that, and we played Rock City when we were 18, and we supported a band called Last of the Teenage Idols, which were a thing at the time, and that was kind of the breakthrough for me, really, because at that time I was obsessed with people like Billy Sheehan, and I didn't play much bass really. I was just soloing as much as I could, and I didn't care a shit about the song. It was all about what I could do. and strangely enough, I got noticed by a bloke there who wants to go out with my sister, and that's a recurring theme, getting him back because people want to go out with my sister, and then from that, when Sabbat were looking for a bass player, I got recommended by the guy who was trying to go out with my sister because he'd seen me at this gig. So I got the gig with them, and that was, I would say, and I was 19, nearly 20 when that happened, I think. Yeah, so we're jumping on a bit. But that was the one that then I realised I really got to get my shit together because they were great musicians. That was thrash metal, but to play thrash metal properly like they did. I mean, Andy, who was in that band, the songwriter, who plays for Priest nowadays, so he's a great musician then. And he knew all the music theory, and up until that point, I'd just been literally playing off records and playing by ear.
Yeah.
And it was then that I thought, right, I really got to get some lessons. So I used to go down to London every 2 weeks to go and have a lesson with a guy called Joe Hubbard, who was a pretty big fusion session player at the time. He'd played with Gary Newman and Carly Simon and people like this. So I started with him, and then I went with another guy called Stuart Bradley, who played with in Roger Taylor of Queen's band, The Cross, and he was a great bass player as well. So I just did a lot of that for a good 5 or 6 years after that. I really tried to get my act together on the theory side of it as well, And they introduced me to a lot more than just rock music from a playing point of view. Because at that time it was just, well, I'm in a heavy metal band and that's what I do.
I guess a lot of people don't realise that because they listen to heavy metal and thrash metal or whatever, and they think it's just a load of noise, but actually it's so technical, isn't it? A lot of it, and all the time signatures and key changes and all that stuff. I had to do some Slayer stuff a few years back when I was doing that film project called Götterdämmerung, and that was the song I was most nervous about of the whole set. We were doing Zeppelin and the Doors and stuff, but doing Rain and Blood, that was the one that petrified me every night, because you can't fake it, and you've got to do it with such attitude, haven't you?
Yeah, and for that to sound good, I mean, Andy Sneap, I was telling you about, who plays for Priest now, he was such a dictator in that band in a good way, because I'd never rehearsed before. When I got with Sabbat, that was a full-time professional gig. So he had a rehearsal room in the studio and all that, and we would literally rehearse every day. We'd go up and do a whole day's rehearsal, getting ready to go on tour and at first it was getting ready to record the album. So we'd go up there every day, play all day, and then we'd go to the gym and work out and try and look. And what it did for your playing was unbelievable, because you got, especially my right hand conditioning, because I'm playing metal, but I played with my fingers and I've got to keep up with these guys. It was they were all like, oh yeah, but you should play with a pick, because it's more that kind of music, and I didn't want to. So it was either I really go to town on getting my right hand really solid, and it's I would say those formative years have helped me. Because having a really solid right hand rhythm kind of thing is mainly the point of a bass in most bands, is that the timing and the groove and all that kind of thing, and if you've got all that in you've got all that in reserve, that you can go really fast, and you don't need to, but you've got it, your hands really in really good condition, if you know what I mean.
Totally. So that was your Hamburg, that was your 10,000 hours of doing all the practice. And
I'll give Andy a big up for that, because he was really strict. It had to be, and their songs were weird. Sabbat songs, they had kind of 13 different riffs, and then you'd go back to the start and then redo those 13 different riffs, and then you'd go off onto it was more like the way jazz music's put together, but it was heavy metal riffs instead of chords, 2-5-1 chord sequences, if you know what I mean. So they'd enter another B section, and then you'd eventually come back to the first 13 riffs kind of thing. And it just didn't make sense to me at the time. I remember saying to Andy, I said, how do you memorize all this? And he just said, well, you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and the next thing always leads on to the next thing, and eventually you get it.
Yeah.
But it was just sheer hard work, and that's it, So
yeah, definitely.
Great. It was a great learning ground. Everything since then's been easy.
Yeah, I remember for me, I think I was 18 or might have been 19, but I think I was 18. And we went out to Cervinia in northern Italy. We did a ski season out there, and we were doing like 9 gigs a week in this bar where you could still smoke inside back then in Italy. And we were doing at least 2 hours a night, sometimes more And, one night we'd play like all Chili Peppers. The next night we'd do all Blink-182. And then we'd just be trying to play as many songs as we could. But as a vocalist, it was so good for my stamina, just singing that many, just doing that many gigs, and obviously being that young and obviously getting that pissed as well. And you soon learn, don't you? Speaking of which, I'm going to have a whiskey, I think.
Yeah, I need to go and get one. Can I pause a minute while I go?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, we'll have a quick break while you go and grab yourself a drink.
Back in a minute. Hold on.
All right, mate. Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers, mate. It's great to chat to you, man.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks for doing this. It's great. You're always a man of many ideas and always on it.
Do you know what, mate? I was really nervous about doing this. The main reason being that I've always thought I've got a really girly, high voice because obviously I'm a rock singer and my speaker voice is really high. And then the first person I interview is you, who's got the most manly, boomy voice ever. So this is a real baptism of fire. So
well, hope it's not too boring.
Also, you can speak for England, mate, which is good. So I knew it wasn't going to be a boring one. We've had a few nights like this on the tour bus anyway, haven't we?
Yeah. It's been great. I miss that. God.
Yeah, I know. Doing gigs. How have you been surviving this Corona crisis? Have you stayed sane? Obviously, spending time with the girls and.
Well, being completely honest with you, I do a bit of truck driving as well when I'm not on tour.
Yeah.
That when this first kicked off, that was crazy, and obviously we lost all the gigs we're doing and all the rest of it. But I still had that as a bit of a lifeline. I was like, oh, thank God I've got a truck driving license, so I was getting asked to do loads of work, so I did that. But about a week and a half ago, that the bottom fell out of that, so so there's none of that going around either at the moment. So, yeah.
Well, going back to obviously what this podcast is about is, it's about staying alive and basically staying afloat and how different musicians, survive through a lifetime of doing gigs. And then because like you said, sometimes the bottom could just fall up, like a tour could be cancelled or whatever. And obviously you just mentioned that. I mean, to me, don't take this the wrong way, but I always feel it's like sacrilege you driving the truck because you're honestly one of the best bass players I've ever met. I think you're brilliant. But obviously, I guess it takes the pressure of you having to hustle for gigs, and if it works for you, it works for you, and you pick and choose your gigs. And
to be honest, it's not something I want to do. It was more a necessity because I've got a wife and 2 kids, and when the kids came along, it was really a case of you've got to always be bringing some money in. And so, for example, when I spoke to you before about it, when I've had tours booked with Robin Gibb, which would have been a great earner. It's got cancelled at the last minute. So then the first time that happened, I'd had the whole week. Well, it kind of as soon as I got that gig, I thought, oh, this is my job now. This is it. And so I didn't work. I just sat around practicing, waiting, and then the gigs would come in. I'd go and do the gigs. And then the first time we had a lot of gigs booked and it didn't come off, and I'd not been to work for a good couple of weeks. I'd just been at home practicing. We were suddenly there going, now we've got no income.
Yeah.
What do we do? And so I remember then going, oh, I've really got to get a job again. So I called a friend of my dad's who'd got a van driving thing. He said, oh, you can drive on my van for us for a bit. And he just said to me, he said, if you get your lorry driving license, your class 2 it was at the time, he said, I can give you more work, then you can just jump in and out whenever if anything goes wrong, you always got the fallback. So I did that, and then because I got my class 2, I got my class 1 as well. And it's served as I've needed it so many times over the years when you've got gigs where stuff gets cancelled or you may have 5 weeks of touring and then you've got nothing again for another 3 months. And in the meantime, I've always been trying to push my own stuff, and we do. I've got a deal with a band in Germany at the moment, but especially these days, it doesn't bring in a lot of money.
Yeah.
And when we tour, we're more or less paying for it ourselves. So that's just the way the world is. Unless you're lucky enough to be Ed Sheeran or Elton John, I think this is the way you have to do it and just accept it. But
yeah, definitely. And it's always the same story. I've had these conversations with Earl Slick a lot as well, because I've been on the road with him, and exactly the same. And you think at his level he'd be earning enough money for it to be fine. But he said even when he was playing with Bowie, suddenly it's like, oh, you just wouldn't get called for the next tour, and then what do you do? It's the same for everyone, I guess.
Unless you're the artist and you're, that big name artist. The rest of us sidemen in sidemen gigs I've had like that. It's a very precarious way. A friend of mine played drums for Robin for 7 years, and then just on one particular gig, they just decided not to call him, and they called another drummer. And he assumed he was going on tour, and no one had called him to say you weren't. They just didn't send him the details. I mean, and that's, to be honest, most of the management I've ever worked with, that's what you get. You don't get sorry, thanks for all your service, you've done great, but we're going to use somebody else. You just don't, the phone doesn't ring. That's that.
Yeah, well, let's backtrack and talk about that anyway. So how did this sort of metalhead get involved with Robin Gibb in the first place?
Well, to go back a bit, so after the Sabbat thing happened, I then that didn't actually last that long, about a year, and then myself and Andy decided to form another band after that, and we did that for about 4 years. That was called Godsend. It's kind of, we got a deal, but it wasn't as successful as Sabbath. We were trying to be more it was the grunge period at that point, so we were kind of jumping into that a bit, trying to be a bit Soundgarden and all this kind of thing, but we're kind of missing the boat a bit as well. And then my mum died in '94, and at that point the band with Andy again, the second band, split up, and myself and my wife, well, my girlfriend as she was at that time, just said, let's go away. And I wanted to go to LA and do one of them LA school things, kind of like what Pete Thorne does now, all that shredding kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that was so hard to get into, and needed a lot of money and all this. So we ended up going to Australia on a work visa, because you could get a work visa there. So I went to Australia, did a year there of backpacking and whatever, and actually landed a job at their base institute in Sydney and taught there for a while.
Cool.
And that was great because I met, again, another one of the teachers was a great jazz player, and I started to get into that then, because it does actually relate to every piece of music. It's it's kind of taking it as far as it can go, I think, theory wise.
Yeah.
But it's great, and as for a bass player, learning that stuff really does relate to any kind of music. So it's that was a good thing for me.
But it's like you were saying before about, having that in your armory, and then you don't have to do all these weird scales and things all the time. But if you know how to do it, it's always there, isn't it?
Yeah. And you know what, even all that, the flashy stuff aside, it's more when you listen to a jazz walking bass line, and it's taking you on a little journey and leading you to where the song's going to go, a little approach to the next thing. And I found that so useful in pop music, let's call rock pop music, because you can do the same thing. You just, that little lead-in note and whatever that the rest of the band aren't doing, just links it all together and makes, I think it makes you sound like, yeah, you're a proper bass player. You know what you're doing. You're doing that thing. And it's so subtle. It's not that you're flying around the fretboard and, I got more into that as I got older than I did trying to be Billy Sheehan, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I then started to realise what really good, Billy's a great bass player, but really what a traditional bass player in a role, and then making the song really work. And
yeah, totally.
You get more gigs through that, and it's it's like that old thing that we've always heard, The same with drummers, you may be able to do all the licks and the rudiments, but you've got to be able to go 1, 2, 3, 4 and keep everybody dancing. Otherwise, you ain't got a gig.
Definitely. And there's nothing worse than a bass player just soloing the whole gig, is there?
No. And I was guilty of that when I was 18, 19. Definitely.
Well, unless you're John Entwistle, I suppose.
but I mean, even him, if you actually listen to majority of his bass lines are just bass lines. When we were together learning we did Who Are We, didn't we, this year on the classic?
Who Are You? Yeah.
That's quite just a standard simple bass line most of the time.
Yeah.
It's the odd
definitely.
You can tell he's got it there if he wants it, but mostly it's just solid and he's laying it down.
Yeah, they're just genius bass lines, aren't they? And the way Townsend played, he was sort of like a rhythm player with a bit of lead added in, wasn't he? And I think just Won't Get Fooled Again is just a genius bit of bass playing, isn't it? It just gives that chorus such a lift, that do, all that stuff, and that's not
very hard to play, but it's great, and you think, I'd have thought of that. It's a hook,
Yeah, totally. I mean, obviously, I'm a massive Beatles head as well. And I was listening to Here Comes the Sun in the car yesterday. We just went for a little drive because we've been stuck in a house, obviously, for the last month. And I was just listening. I mean, that whole song's brilliant. But if you just listen to Ringo's drums on that, they're just like, he just always did the right thing at the right time. It's like, it's just so clever. And
exactly.
And I think
all
it's the
for
same
the song.
with all. Exactly, all for the song. And I think that's what made all those guys amazing. Anyway, I digress.
So you're asking me about Robin Gibb. So anyway, going back to my quick life story.
Yeah.
Ronnie Corbett show this. Anyway, when I got back from Australia, I went to have lessons again because I've been teaching out there. I was well into it by then. I went back and I saw an old teacher of mine, Rob Burns, who was a session player who famously played the bass solo at the end of Blackadder on Blackadder.
Right.
Yeah. And he played with Gilmore and quite a few people. And I went to see him in London, and he said, well, instead of me giving you private lessons again, he said, I now run a college that's affiliated to Thames Valley University, and you can get a music degree. And do it that way. So I did. I went and I moved to. This is before we had kids. So I moved to London in '98, and I spent 4 years there. I got my music degree. I ended up working with Mickey Most on an album, which was great. It was like a 3-month contract.
Awesome.
And we were working with a producer called Dave Anderson, I think his name was, and he'd worked with the Big Sur and quite a few other people. And that was real. Kind of Jeff Buckley style music.
Cool. Sounds great.
And it was so good for my learning. Again, I remember one song he just said, right, you're going to play this song and you can only play root and fifth all the way through. I don't want you to play any fills or anything melodic, just root and fifth all the way through. It says, and then at the very end, at the very last few bars, I did put something in, and he went, yeah, okay, I'll let you have that. And it stood out, because I'd not done anything all the rest of the song, and things like that. It was just learning curves of how you should play in lots of different styles of music. It was great. And then I was going to stay in London, but myself and my girlfriend at the time, she got pregnant, and she was like, right, you've got to come back to Nottingham because I'm not moving to London now. I'm going to be a mum, and I want to be near my mum. So then I was like, thought that was the end of the world, leaving London. That's end of career. So I came back, obviously, when our daughter was born, and I went to see Andy Sneap again, just to say, hello, I'm back in town, how you going? And literally the very next day, he said, I've just had a band call me, and they need a bass player, but you're going out on tour for 3 months. I was like, yeah, okay. So I did that. I did a European tour for 3 months, and it turns out that band was Messiah's Kiss, which I'm still in, actually.
Yeah.
The tour manager of that was Robin Gibb's tour manager.
Right.
So straight after that, so that was weird because I was playing, really traditional Maiden Priest style kind of heavy metal again, which I hadn't done for years actually. At that point, I'd really left that behind, and. Anyway, he said to me, he was like, I want you to come and play for Robin Gibb. So then literally the week after that, I was in Madrid playing a live TV show with Robin Gibb on a semi-acoustic bass, thinking,
wow,
well, this is a bit weird. And that was nerve-wracking. That was live telly. straight in.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, no chance.
So how did you have to audition for him, or how did it all work?
I've never done an audition in my life.
All right. So you just recommended, and then next thing you know, it's like you're rehearsing.
I've never got around to actually making my own website or anything like that, which I've thought about for years. But every time I ever thought about it, I was so lucky. I'd always got too much on to actually do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I would do that, but I've got a gig tonight, and I'm going here, or I'm flying there, and whatever. So I was with Robin for nearly 10 years, just shy of 10 years before, unfortunately, he died.
Yeah.
Which was a great gig because we got to play everywhere, all over.
It was a big part of your life then, if you were with him that long.
Yeah.
And how was it playing that music? Had you done that type of music up to that point, or? Well,
because I'd gone and done the degree in London.
Yeah.
We were and it was a performance degree. We were playing all kinds of music, and I'm quite competitive anyway, so I wanted to try and be the best at everything. So we'd do a disco kind of project, and then we'd do a rock project and a fusion project and a jazz project. I just wanted to be the best at everything. It was very competitive type school. So I just threw myself into all kinds of music. So when Robin came along, I was like, wow, I actually quite like this stuff, So
yeah, well, they're just brilliant songs, aren't they?
Especially some of their older stuff, like To Love Somebody and Massachusetts and stuff like that. And I really love all those, the kind of 60s stuff as well. That was great. So it wasn't all just disco. But,
yeah, no, totally. Have you got a favourite gig or fondest memory of playing from that time?
Well, yeah, I've told you about the the Val Kilmer moment, haven't I?
I think so. Remind me.
So yeah, we were doing a UNICEF gig in Germany, and it was in a big hotel, and because I was just the new guy and the bass player, right? Well, we actually didn't have a drummer at the time. We just had me playing bass, an acoustic guitarist, and two backing singers. We did for the first year we did it just like that,
right?
So again, it was quite nerve-wracking because you're out there. It's nice having a drummer there because you're kind of part of a team, and you're never on your own. But when you're just you're definitely on your own when you're just doing it with an acoustic guitarist. And anyway, we got to the hotel, and we were all staying at another hotel, and the gig was on in this other big hotel. Well, when we got there, they'd overbooked the room, so I had to stay in the actual hotel that the gig was on my own, while the rest of the band and the management.
What a shame.
Where else? Yeah, brilliant. I was like, bonus. And then that was so the Here Begins a very weird night. We'd just done another album with Messiah's Kiss, who again was the same tour manager as Robin Gibb had. Yeah. And actually, he was like the band's real manager for Messiah's Kiss. And they needed to do a photo session for the album. And I was at this hotel about to go on stage with, there was a couple of hours to go, and I was just hanging around there. So they said, right, we're going to drive down. And the drummer of this band is about 6'5", huge. Right. And they're all big German lads. Yeah. So I had no heavy metal gear with me. I just had a pair of jeans and a black T-shirt and was about to go on stage with Robin. But they wanted me to look metal.
Right.
So they came down, they parked opposite the hotel. I came out of the hotel. They undid the boot of their car, and I had to put on these leather trousers, which were for a 6'5", rather big German, and not me. He then put on these big winkle picker kind of rock boots, and I was going, I'm not wearing them. They're going, yeah, come on, because we've got to do this photo session. So we literally did the photo session opposite the hotel before I was going on to this big UNICEF gig. And I've got all their clothes on, and they're all three sizes too big for me. So we have this quick photo session anyway, and I'm literally getting changed, trousers down, outside opposite the hotel, at the boot of the car, like you go to an amateur football match, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, straight back into the hotel, and I thought, right, I'm going to go to our dressing room and just do a bit of practice because I was really nervous. And I'd got my semi-acoustic bass here. I tried to get into our dressing room, as I opened the door, there's Val Kilmer lying on the floor doing sit-ups with his manager, who looked like something out of the Goodfellas, with a big white scarf and a big kind of grey suit. And he's going, "Hey, guy, can you just leave us a moment?" And I'm like, "Batman's on the floor. What's going on here?" I was like, okay. So I came out. And it was so I phoned my wife up and I was going, "You never guess who's on my dressing room floor? It's Val Kilmer." She's going, "No way," blah blah blah. Anyway,
yeah.
About an hour later, I decided to go back because I was getting nervous at this point, and I think Robin was coming in another hour, so I wanted to keep running through the songs and make sure I knew them. So I got back. I went back to the dressing room, and he's still there, and he's doing a speech, so he's reciting his speech and all this kind of thing. And they're going, "Oh, can you just give us 10 minutes more?" And at this point, I was so nervous. I was like, "No, you've got to go now because I've got to practice these songs. I'm sorry, I don't really care who you are. You've got to go." So technically, I kicked Val Kilmer out of the dressing room.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Fuck you, Val Kilmer.
Yeah, no way, Kilmer. Get lost. Go play bass.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And what kind of gigs were you doing? Obviously, you mentioned TV shows, but was it all kind of big festivals and that sort of thing with Robin?
I tell you what, it was a great artist to work for because of who he was. You'd get to do the gigs that no one ever gets to do. So once we played on the end of a tennis court with Steffi Graf and Gabriele Sabatini playing a tennis match. We're on the end of the stage with the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra doing a live TV show thing. Wow. Playing. I think we were playing. Not Stayin' Alive. What's the other one? He always used to. Saturday Night Fever or something like that. Anyway, right. we're doing that while they're playing tennis. Just bizarre. To do those gigs.
It's incredible where you end up sometimes, isn't it? In this business. I was saying I did a little kind of, I guess, masterclass in ICMP.
I saw that
in Kilburn, a few weeks ago, and I was chatting to the guys there, and I was just saying, literally, if you've got any questions about touring, just ask, because I've done, and I was thinking about it, I was like, I've been in a car, in a van, in the back of a lorry, in a private jet, and it's just bizarre. You end up, in these random, random flats in Moscow or wherever, places you'd never normally get to go, and I think musicians have a kind of unique insight into the world, because I always find you get kind of thrust into these situations where I guess the people that have paid for the performance or the artist are there. Yeah. So subsequently, this penniless musician from Reading or Nottingham, in your case, is just surrounded by millionaires. You live that lifestyle for a minute, don't you?
Well, yeah, I met Vladimir Putin twice. I played the Kremlin twice, and literally, I remember playing it, and then 2 days later, I was driving a truck round Nottingham going, I was in the Kremlin 2 days ago. What's going on?
Yeah. Oh, the Kremlin's an interesting place, isn't it? I think that's the coldest I've ever been, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Walk around the Kremlin. I went there in January, and we were in winter.
Yeah. The river was frozen when we were there.
Yeah, I've specifically, I'm not a hairy person in general, but I specifically remember my leg hairs poking through my jeans because I was so cold.
Your body growing it as you walk around, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could write a book about the gigs we did with Robin. Just the Demis Roussos one was a classic. It was some millionaire who in Greece who wanted Demis Roussos to play there, and I think I was the only person who knew who he was. As we're coming through the airport, I'm seeing this guy, and I'm going. He was in a wheelchair at the time, actually, shortly before he died, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, that's Demis Roussos, that is. I'm sure it is. And no one said anything. And then we got to the gig, and the gig was literally a swimming pool full of sharks proper James Bond, with the stage kind of that was where the dance floor was, and the stage kind of went up, and then if you looked at the back of the stage, if you decided to jump off the back of the stage, you were going like 300 foot down a cliff into the sea.
Wow.
You know? Amazing. And it wasn't until we'd finished playing that when we came off stage, Demis was there and he'd watched the whole show, and he asked me to do his album, which was great. But I never actually got to do it because our manager got involved and money got involved, and that was that, you know.
Yeah, well, I guess the business side of things always sort of affects it, doesn't it? I remember you telling me before about, I don't know how much you can say on a podcast, but obviously certain things where they try to make you pay for breakfast and stuff because you're in a posh hotel and and things like that. And management always seems to get in the way of things because like we were just saying about kind of living that lifestyle, and you're thrust into these sort of 5-star hotels where you might be traveling first class or whatever, you know, and then
getting paid in pittance.
Yeah, exactly. But your wages are, you know, don't sort of line up with that, do they?
No, like I told you, the breakfast of that particular hotel, when they decided to try and charge us, we'd done 3 nights in Hong Kong back to back, and so we've been staying in this 5-star hotel all week. And then the management decided that we're going to try and charge us for breakfast, which had never happened before. That's a kind of, you know how it is. It's a kind of done deal in music terms. You know,
you get breakfast, don't you? And then a per diem usually, and sometimes catering if you're abroad.
Yeah, and obviously with that gig, you were supposed to get all mod cons, really, other than, you know. And, and then so the management went, and it worked out. It was more than we were getting for the 3, you know, for that little bit of the tour. It was like, well, we're not making any money now because it's a 5-star hotel.
The breakfast was that much.
Oh, it was ridiculous. You know, it's the most expensive place in Hong Kong, and we've been having a breakfast there every day. Well, it was more than the fee that we were getting paid. I'm not joking. It was ridiculous.
So what happened in the end?
I refused to pay it. And then by the time, then we flew from there to Tokyo to play. And I was really, everybody was refusing to pay. But then when the management came in and they were going again, you know, you've got to do this, you've got to sort this out. All the people who were backing me up just seemed to disappear. And I was left on my own, and I had a big row with the management. I said, they were like, well, you either pay this or you can look for another gig. And I said, okay, then go and get another bass player now. Then we're going on. You called their bluff. Yeah. And then the funny thing is Robin didn't know anything about it. He got wind of it, came in and kind of tore a strip off all the managers, and we were all sitting pretty. So it was great. Great.
He obviously liked you then. You know, you were with him for a long time, weren't you? And he obviously loved having you around and stuff. I got on really well with him. At first, we were kind of kept away from him a bit, but as you know, as the years went by, I was a regular, obviously, and we had quite a few people go and replace. So I was quite pleased that I'd still kept my job, and so because I was a familiar face, I think we got closer and did, you know, and we'd had a few adventures along the way. We did a live radio show once. And there was like 100 people studio audience, and again there's no drummer, and I was flown in to be the MD of that one actually. So we had a different keyboardist and a different guitarist. So I spent the day showing them how we rearranged the songs slightly, and we went on to do it, and it was live. So you really you're nervous, but you're concentrating like you wouldn't believe. You know, you're constantly saying to yourself, "I can do this. I'm good. I can do this. It's all right. Don't worry." Simple, you've done it a million times. And so I'm just doing To Love Somebody, and there's a little easy bass thing at the start that goes dun 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 dun. So I'm doing this lick, and it's going great, and I'm looking at my bass, and I just literally just lift my eyes up, and Robin's right in front of me. His face is literally nose to nose, and he's going, what's the first line? He's coming in a minute, and I'm kind of can't speak to him properly because I'm concentrated. And I'm going, lifeline, and he goes, and he just looks at me, and perfectly on time, he turns around to the audience and goes, there's a light, like this. And then turns around to me and winks and points and goes, I was like,
Whew.
Oh man, there's nothing scarier as a singer when you can't remember the first line of a song. It's happened to me so many times, even on the tour we just did. Like, you have like this sort of 15-second like soul destroying panic, and then some reason you start this, literally half a second before you're about to sing, it just comes into your brain. It's so weird.
Well, I had it because on that last tour I was singing a couple of songs, and on the one that we filmed in Liverpool, and I'd done Lagrange perfectly every single time. Worked all right. The one we filmed, it came to the second line and I couldn't remember it, so I just said the first line again.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So I was like, oh God, it's just your brain just clips, doesn't it? And how many times have we done it?
Well, there's something as soon as they press that record button, it's just different, isn't it? Yeah. It's for some reason, I don't know why. Some people are just brilliant at it, but some people just don't record very well, do they? I guess if they hadn't have told us there was 30 cameras in the room, maybe we would have just done a normal gig.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, the night before when we were in London was a brilliant gig. It was one of my favourite ones of that tour. And, why didn't you film that? We were on fire.
Yeah. Why don't we just talk a little bit about it? Because obviously some people might not know what the Classic Rock Show is or whatever. So firstly, that's obviously where we met, and we're in the band together, and hopefully going to be touring again in January, February next year. You're probably the longest serving member in it now, or one of them anyway. So how did you get involved in it?
It's me and Carl actually. The longest ones now, and James, of course, because he's his show. I got involved with the previous guitarist Howie. Again, that actually, it's funny how these things happen. That stems from the Gibb thing. So I was doing the Gibb thing, and we ended up touring Australia with Bonnie Tyler's band, and the guitarist out of that, Matt, I got to know him quite a few times because we all seem to be doing a TV show or something, but it's always Robin Gibb and there's always Bonnie Tyler. So you get to know their band, and so over the years, over a 10-year period, we bumped into each other so many times.
It's weird how that happens, isn't it? I remember doing when I was doing the Gut to Dammerung tour, for some reason, and it's because that was a heavy metal project, but for some reason we were always on the same bill as Jake Bugg. And I used to always see Jake Bugg in catering, and it was getting to the point where it's just a bit awkward. Yeah. And so in the end, we sort of I introduced myself and made friends with this drummer Jack, and then we sort of ended up having a beer at the last gig of the tour, and it was, I want to say, about 5 or 6 things. And he was a lovely bloke actually, Jake Bugg. I think he's a bit misunderstood, but he's quite self-deprecating, and he's a lovely little lad, actually. Anyway, sorry, mate, carry on.
He's a local lad to us. He's a local to here.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, he's great. He's a great songwriter, man.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. I've never actually met him, but a lot of people I know him and have met him, and he used to rehearse at a friend of mine's place down the road. So,
cool.
Anyway, we digress. What are we talking about? So what happened is, the guy from Bonnie Tyler's band, he knew another bass player who knew a singer who needed a bass player, and that turned out to be Carl Sentence, who now sings for Nazareth, and he was doing he was doing the Classic Rock Show at the time. So and Howie was in his original band, so I got recommended through the Bonnie Tyler guy to get for this gig with Carl, and it turns out he was only in Leicester, so it was pretty local to me. So I ended up in a band with those guys, and they were doing the Classic Rock Show already. And so after about a year, they asked me if I'd do that as well. So and now I'm still here, and they both left.
Yeah, he's such a cool singer, Carl. It's a shame. It's a shame for me because there's so many. There's not many gigs where 2 lead singers get to work together, really. And when I was doing the Thriller thing, obviously I never did it with Ricardo, and I know Ricardo was in the Classic Rock Show before me, and I'm big fans of all these guys, and I never get to work with them. So but obviously, me and Rudy are working really well together. I think this lineup's great. So, but for someone who's never seen the Classic Rock Show, how would you describe it to them?
It's obviously it's a covers band, but we're playing big theatres to pretty decent audiences, and and the whole concept is to try and make what we're doing as close to the original as possible. So the guitarists are so, the fine details of every, you've got to play the correct guitar for the correct song. So all the bits are, it's taken to a degree I've never known to try and replicate what the original song was. So it's like a live jukebox for people who are into that kind of music.
Yeah, it's good fun. And you take your top off every night.
Well, I spent most of my early youth without a top on, which actually goes back to the beginning. That was the Sid Vicious thing, you see. So that's where that started.
Yeah.
So,
I bet you didn't do that with Gib.
No. No, I didn't. So that's what the classic rock show does, really. It's that kind of, but it's great fun. It's great fun to do, and
that's it. Yeah. Here's a random question that I'm gonna try and ask everybody. You liar! I've seen it. I think I've seen it. I'm
glad you are.
The question is, do you think you made it?
In experiences, yes. Financially, no.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
And do you think Liverpool are ever going to win the Premier League?
It's cursed, isn't it? It seems to be cursed.
It took a global pandemic, didn't it?
To stop them, yeah.
Yeah. Because you're a Liverpool fan, aren't you? But obviously you grew up in Nottingham.
I was 7 years old, yeah.
Yeah. So you're not a Forest fan, are you?
Well, the story there is my dad's originally from Grimsby, so he moved to Nottingham when he was, I don't know, about 12 years old, something like that. And he's a complete football head, my dad is. And he started working for County and Forest as a programme seller, and eventually got on County's books. But he always wanted to support County because they wore the same kit as Grimsby, and he lived literally across the road from the ground. So because he was a staunch Notts County fan, I could never be a Forest fan. It just wasn't allowed. Right. So then you're growing up, and this Notts County are never on the TV. They were usually languishing in the 4th division or what it was at that time. So, and then the only team who's on is Liverpool, and my dad quite liked them because they were a good team at the time. And they also had the England captain Kevin Keegan in the side, and it all started because I got his card in a shredded wheat packet. Kevin Keegan wearing an England kit, and my dad was a big England fan. He was like, "Oh yeah, that's Kevin Keegan's brilliant. Plays for Liverpool. They're on telly today." So I watched them, and I think they beat Tottenham 7-0. I was like, "Right, I'm a Liverpool fan now. That's it."
If only it had gone the other way, you'd have had a lifetime of anguish as a Spurs fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what? I think football's the thing I miss most about this quarantine. Really miss just putting the telly on and watching the football and playing football as well. Do you know, I got some new football boots for my birthday the other day, and I haven't been able to wear them yet, and it's breaking my heart actually.
Yeah, I know. I mean, even I do a lot of work with a wedding function band. You know, how the mighty have fallen. But anyway, and but the great thing about that band is that we all take a football, and we're usually out round the back of some big marquee having a kick about, and
having a kick around. Yeah, it's a great idea.
And
to stick a football in the car.
I've always got one in my boot, mate. Definitely.
I'm going to let you decide either to pick a supergroup or a five-a-side football team. So you can either pick your dream band or your dream five-a-side football team that you can be in, one or the other. And I guess if you want, you could have musicians in the five-a-side team and you could have footballers in the supergroup. That's up to you. But I want you to pick either a five-a-side football team or a band that you could be in. Who would be in it?
I'd like to be in Crowded House.
Just Crowded House, that would be your supergroup.
Yeah, because here's my thinking on this. I absolutely love the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but I would never want to replace Flea, even if I could do what he does.
Yeah.
Because he's such an integral part of the band.
Yeah, yeah.
To me, they're sacred. One of my favourite bands, and they're sacred because you've got him and John Frusciante and the other guys, and it's got to be those four. So I want to be in that band, but I wouldn't want to replace anybody because they're one of my favourite bands, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
All the way down to Crowded House. Now, nothing against the bass player in Crowded House. He's a great bass player. But it's... I think I could get in there. He's not as high profile as, say, Flea is in their band. So I'll probably, just play with Neil Finn. That'd be great.
Yeah. He's after your job.
Yeah. maybe a supergroup. I'd like to play with Neil Finn, Eddie Vedder, me, and I'll just put Carl Penny on drums. I'll be happy with that.
I think he'd be happy with that as well. I was watching that the One Global Citizen concert last night. Did you see that?
No, I think we're going to watch it tonight. I think my wife. Yeah.
There's some
taped it. That's our older mom.
Taped it. She's taped it from the live stream. But yeah, there was some interesting moments, to say the least. Paul McCartney, but obviously he's Paul McCartney's my hero. I'm not going to say a bad word about him, but he did
brushed his shoulder once.
Did you?
Brushed his shoulder. Yeah, I got invited. A friend of mine, he did a premiere of an album he was doing when I was living in London at Leicester Square. And we got in with all the Sun readers. Somebody knew somebody did, the Sun reader competitions that they get, kind of a thing. Anyway, and you could go and be there to his premiere. So I ended up at the premiere of his album, and he literally walked past me and brushed me shoulder. I was like, "Get out of the way, Paul! You and Kilmer, get lost."
There's that brilliant. I think it must be on YouTube. I think it's after. It's either the Oscars or the Grammys or something in the States. And there's this sort of real VIP after show party. And there's Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters and Paul McCartney, and the bouncers not letting him in to this VIP party. Brilliant. And Taylor Hawkins is going, "He's Paul McCartney." He's going, "I'm sorry, he's not on the list." He's like, "How VIP does this have to be?" So anyway, it's brilliant. And so Paul McCartney was on. They did like a sort of quite strange version of Lady Madonna. I thought Elton John sounded better as well, to be honest. He did like a version of "I'm Still Standing." And then
I've got so many rock and roll stories. I've got an Elton John story.
Go on. There's no reason you can't tell it.
Never met him, right? But I've been to his house about 4 or 5 times.
Right.
Because I was the truck driver that took all the stuff in for his, what's he called it, sequins and gowns party or something? I can't remember. He has a big charity party with this big marquee. I mean, this marquee is not a marquee, mate. It's like a village.
Right.
and you have to drive a truck down his driveway. And then you have to be really careful not to knock over his statue, because you literally have to go past his house.
What's it of, the statue? Is it him?
No, it's like, one of them really kind of proper formal English houses where they've got a waterfall with some kind of cherub spitting water, kind of something like that, as I remember, and a real, that kind of Georgian kind of manor house type look. Yeah. Anyway, you've got to drive in between this on the gravel, try not to knock anything, right? Which was art in the mouth every time I did it. And then out of that, and they've got this track, and it goes past this donkey castle. The bloke's got a castle, a cardboard castle, cardboard wooden castle with donkeys in it. And I'm not joking, right? And you go past this donkey castle, and then you deliver. I was working for a lighting company when I was a student, and you deliver all the lights to his place and this, that, and the other. So, and then from the top of his garden, you look straight into Windsor Castle.
All right.
Like this big vista into Windsor Castle. So that's my Elton John house story.
You should have just hid in one of the bushes and gone to the party.
Yeah, I know.
I suppose you couldn't have hidden the truck though. That would have been a bit hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, Eddie Vedder was on that thing last night as well, and he was sort of in funeral mode. He was sort of playing a song I didn't know actually on like a church organ, and But anyway, you'll see it. It's still cool. I'd still rather watch Eddie Vedder playing a church organ than most stuff. But,
I met him. I could tell you all these stories.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah, we were doing a gig in Argentina with Robin, and we met him because he was at the same hotel, and it was such a lovely bunch of blokes, really nice. Although the bouncers did try and kill us as we went over to say hello. But
did they?
Yeah, luckily all the management people got involved, and then we all ended up talking, and they were great, really down to earth, and Eddie was a lovely bloke. He was just going around trying to introduce you to everybody he knew.
Oh, that's so cool.
Really, really nice, humble bloke. It's good.
Well, that's good to know. Everyone calls him Uncle Eddie, don't they? I think he. Yeah, he always seems like a great bloke. I guess as well, like, these people have a lifetime of being a super famous person, and it depends when you catch them, doesn't it? Like, yeah, I'm sure I've told you my Jimmy Page story before, where I met Jimmy Page on the train, and he was just such a gentleman, and he sat with me and my friend Ashby on the train from Reading, where we bumped into him all the way to London, and he had so much time for us, and he sat in normal class. It was sort of pretty empty train, just sat opposite us, just chatting about Led Zeppelin and blues and all this stuff. And I've heard people say things about Jimmy Page in the past, like, oh, he's this and he's that, but if you go up to him at a gig where there's thousands of people there trying to, it's a different scenario, isn't it? But
it's nice to meet people, because I've been lucky, obviously 10 years with Robin, I met bloody everybody, but and most of them, I'd say, there is a few people I would say are what their reputation says they are. But
go on, spill the beans, Wayne.
No. Anyway, but most people are really nice, because I think you're introduced then as someone who does the same job. You're not.
Yeah, definitely
level.
Yeah.
And then they seem to probably give you more of the time of day as they would. I'm assuming.
Yeah, if you go up and ask for a selfie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever really been in that situation, so anyone can have a selfie with me. I'm not bothered.
You want to start selling them, mate? You might have to if this quarantine lasts forever. You might have to start selling topless sort of A5 little leaflet. So what's next, mate? After this quarantine?
Tell you what, I've never practiced so much. It's been great for that. I really enjoy. Because every day I'll do a workout in the morning, and my daughters are here, and we'll do that together, and then obviously a few chores that her indoors has got set up for me. And, but usually I'm lucky. I built my own little studio a few years ago, and I'm just in here, and I've got a practice routine of I'm going through. I've got a couple of courses I've bought recently, and I'm going through them. And I'm learning the double bass as well, so that's nice. And I'm doing a bit of writing, so it's I'm quite enjoying it.
Yeah.
Not to be glib about all the people who are obviously suffering at the time, Obviously.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's pros and cons to everything, isn't there? So it's obviously nice to spend time with your family and all that stuff, and like you say, get practice. I've been in my studio quite a bit as well, and I've been doing some remote sessions, and the online gigs I've been doing have been great, actually. I know you've
have been great.
Watched some of them, but it's just been so lovely, because you don't realise how over the years you've picked up a following, and people that genuinely love what you do, and they don't always get the chance to come out and see your gigs.
You're so good at that as well, mate. I really have to say, I could. There were a couple of people saying, "Oh, Wayne, why don't you do that?" And I was like, "I can't do that. There's no way." I could sing my own songs, and maybe the odd song that I've rehearsed and this, that, and the other that's in my range. But the people are firing songs at you all the time, and if I was in a band as a bass player, then I could do it. But who just wants to see me just sitting there playing? Play as this bass line, Wayne. Yeah, all right.
I don't know. I'd
going to do that, are they?
I'd watch it.
Most boring night ever.
Well, thank you, mate. I'm just a blaggo. I've just learned over the years to blag my way through stuff. But so what's next, mate? After this is all over, what's next?
It depends what starts up again, I suppose. I mean, I'm supposed to be playing. Actually, I've got a contract assigned to play with Jeff Scott Soto.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Who's the other guy?
At TSO.
Yeah, and what's his name? Who's singing for Richie Blackmore now?
I don't know.
Somebody Ramiro. I should know his name, but anyway, he's in the band. And then another guy who sings with Axel Rudy. See, I'm terrible at names in this band. These guys.
That's all right.
I've already had a song.
You'll know their names when you meet them.
You know that I've been like that my whole life. I got, as you know, I studied for Saxon a few years ago, and I got down to the rehearsal room in Brighton. And apart from the singer who I have met before, because I played with Blaze Bailey and he was on a few bills and stuff in the past, so I kind of knew him. And but the rest of the guys, I just didn't know. And I felt terrible, so I went, so we're there, having a coffee break in between rehearsals, and I'm going, and so how long have you been in the band? And, and Paula, what I know really well now, is like, I'm just a founding member who wrote all the songs and all this. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, okay, mate, sorry.
Amazing.
But I never get starstruck just due to the fact that I just don't know who the hell anybody is.
Well, it's a good way to be, mate, because you're just such a genuine bloke, and you've always got time for people, and you can tell, so
Thanks,
there's no need to be starstruck because you are a bloody star.
Tell my wife that.
Mate, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for doing it. It's great.
It's been really fun, and obviously I'll let you know when this is going up, and yeah, hopefully some people will pick up some interesting bits from it.
Yeah, brilliant.
So there we have it, another episode of Stayin' Alive with me, Jesse Smith, this time with my brilliant friend, Wayne Banks. If you'd like to hear more from Wayne, then check out his band Messiah's Kiss at messiahskiss.com. Next week's guest is a very good friend of mine and X Factor superstar Daniel Johnson. It's a real look behind the curtain of what happened in 2009, where Daniel came forth from the show. And Simon Cowell said Daniel was the best first audition he'd ever seen. This was a Jesse Smith production, with music by Neil X, Mark Garfield, and me. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, you can do so by emailing stayinalivepod@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of each other. Stay alive. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Done now then.
We're done. Cut.